What's good, everyone?
Welcome.
Welcome back.
Brand new episode.
Brand
I'm
new
excited.
episode.
Wait, what is this, 27?
This is episode 26.
26. Oh my
Episode
gosh.
26. We're getting through the 7th month of Thinking Wealthy. We've already done
That's
6.
insane.
7th month of Thinking Wealthy.
That's a long time.
We're glad you guys are here. We're glad you guys are joining us on this journey.
Keep grinding. It's been 7 months of hard work. Almost
For real.
7 months.
We're almost 7 months through. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be a heavy grind set by then. Hopefully you've, grown a lot. Reflect back on your past a little bit. Hope you guys have, really kind of grown a bit as people.
Today we got a great episode planned for you guys.
You got something good. But before we do that,
there's a little fee.
Do you want to give the fee or am I
No,
giving the
you're giving the fee today.
I'm giving the fee today. All right. So listen up, right? Every week we come on here. I come to Nick's house and I sit down for 30 minutes and I talk to a microphone.
30 whole minutes.
And then I post that on different podcast hosting websites. And y'all listen to it every week. But see, the thing is this. We don't run ads here.
Mm-hmm.
We don't ask you for money.
Mm-hmm.
We just give this knowledge for free.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a fee.
We only ask for one thing in return.
Go tell someone. Go tell your friends. Don't you want your friends to be as goated as you are?
Yeah.
Don't you want your friends to grow with you? Well, then go tell them. Go tell your grandma. Go tell Steve from work. Go tell him, bruh. Go tell him, Think About the Podcast. This is a good podcast.
That is how we grow, by
Right?
word of mouth.
We grow by word of mouth. So let them know. But all right. I think we're ready.
We got a good episode here. So today's episode is on fulfillment versus happiness. That's kind of like I don't know the exact name that we're gonna go for, but that's the general outline. Is we're gonna be talking about fulfillment versus happiness.
Right.
I recently made a TikTok about this. I think this is a really good topic that everyone on their grind has to understand.
Yeah.
So, well, what are your first initial thoughts? How'd you come up with this episode
I'll kind of
idea?
break into this. So starting off, it's kind of interesting. I went home last night. I worked. I was tired. And I sat down with my mom and I started talking to my mom. To be honest with you, I don't remember what we started with, but we were talking. And eventually we got on the topic of how a lot of people in life are just unhappy kind of going through it because they're seeking happiness in other people, right? I think the main way it started was talking about kind of some relationship stuff going on. Me and my mom were discussing things, and I was talking about how it feels like certain people constantly kind of go from person to person looking for them to be the happiness, right? Yeah. And the thing that's very interesting is that most of the time those people are the most unhappy, right? Kind of a little cool reference. The reason I started thinking about this was there's this Eagles song, right? Mm-hmm. I've been listening to the Eagles again. I used to listen now when I was a little boy, right?
When he was a string bean.
And there's this song that called Lion Eyes, right? And the whole song is about this girl who she's married to this man who's super rich and wealthy, but she doesn't feel happy or fulfilled there because the love isn't there. Then she's also cheating on that man with another guy who is just kind of a younger boy, isn't very rich. It doesn't have that kind of aspect. But instead the love's there, but it feels like she can't be with him either because she is still married to this other man. And in the end, everything she does, everything in life that she reflects, she's looking for happiness in other people, right? Mm-hmm. And the whole song and the whole idea is basically no matter what she does, as she continues to search from person to person looking for them to bring the happiness, she never is happy, right?
Interesting.
And so as I was listening to this, and it was crazy because I hadn't listened to this song in years, right? I know all the words to this song because I listened to it when I was this little kid, but I didn't understand really like the power of what was being said until I sat back and listened to it again, right? And I actually like with my adult brain kind of comprehended what was going on, right? And the message is really cool in my opinion of this idea of like no matter what happens, if you continue to search for happiness in someone else, you will always be unhappy, right? And this dives into things a bit more, right? It's not just searching for happiness in other people. It's searching for, happiness in doing something like going out and like, oh, I'm going to go party and go have fun. Just live my life, right? A lot of people say that, like, I'm just going to live my life and go have fun. And while that's great, I think there's a certain amount of life that you should do that, right? Mm-hmm. Go freaking adventure. Go freaking party. Have a fun night. But you should always be able to come back to your routine, normal life and be having fulfillment there, right? Mm-hmm. Because those parties and those adventures and those vacations are short-lived. They might bring happiness in the moment just as a new fling that you're, hooking up with some random person brings happiness in the moment. Yeah. But in the end, the fulfillment is not there. And it will always lead to you feeling unhappy and unsatisfied with what's going on, right? At least that's my opinion on the whole thing, right? So kind of my whole point is how do we then search for fulfillment and how do we obtain real happiness through fulfillment, right?
So there's this quote that I think applies really well to this that I've still been trying to fully understand to this day, but I heard it recently within the past 6 months. It's essentially is the man who enjoys walking will go much further than the man who enjoys the destination, right?
Right.
So I think this applies perfectly here. You know, people see the destination as that happiness that, like, I want to constantly be excited, dopamine, you know, all that good stuff. And dopamine's good in those reserved amounts, the correct healthy amounts. Right. But I think the person who enjoys the journey much more than the actual destination will go much further. I've talked about this in an actual, like, TikTok that we posted recently. And in the TikTok, I'm like, if you're constantly, it's like, it's not about looking for happiness anymore, right?
Right.
Like, I do want to be happy, of course, but happiness is an emotion that's not stable and it's never going to be there.
No.
But if you're searching for peace, that is so much more suitable for the human psyche than happiness is, right. You know? And I think that's what people don't understand. It's really cool to see, like, to have this perspective at such a young age, you know?
100%.
Not trying to talk on my ego, right? But, like, I think it's really important that a lot of people look at it this way. Because if you're constantly just searching for that happiness, you're never going to find it, because that emotion, happiness, is always all over the place. Like,
right.
One moment you could be happy because you just, like, drank, like, a nice cup of coffee, and then the next moment your dog just, like, kills another dog. And now you got a huge issue, right? And then you're unhappy, right? But, like, peace and, like, finding that solid base to stand on is very much, like, how do I describe it? That's something that is immovable.
And it goes beyond happiness.
It goes beyond happiness.
It's like this idea of, like, a lot of people come into life, they're like, you know, I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy. Yeah. And they're upset when they aren't happy. Exactly. Something isn't going right. I'm unhappy. I want to go back to being happy, right?
Yeah.
But I think that in itself, like, searching, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be happy, okay? Because some people are going to interpret it that way. Of what we're saying is, like, you can't be happy. Like, don't try to be happy. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that happiness, like, real, like, you feel happy, is going to come from fulfillment.
Yeah.
Feeling fulfilled with your life, doing something that means something, and really enjoying the journey, right? I think when you break it down and you start, like, looking at the way people act, a lot of the time, the difference between someone who's really driven and is going to make it somewhere and someone who isn't is the way that they go about motivating themselves to get there, right? We talk a lot about on here of not just being motivated, but being disciplined in that journey, right? Being disciplined and taking the steps every day, action, right? And with that discipline comes fulfillment. You're fulfilled in the sense of you are being disciplined, and that brings the happiness. Rather than people who are looking for motivation and happiness all the time as the way to get there, right? Yeah. So someone who's constantly just looking for this motivation and this happiness that's going to come will never really truly be happy, because it's fleeting. It's constantly out of their reach. So it feels like when it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to make this big step and maybe it will work.
It's like a fake happiness.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm going to be happy because right now I'm really excited. Maybe this will work. Maybe this time I will get to that happiness. But what they don't realize is that's never there. It's constantly fleeting. It's constantly moving away from you. So you have to restructure the way you think and to, in turn, look for fulfillment in what you're doing, right? If you feel good about what you're doing and feel good about the process and the learning that you're having, all of that, worry about completing the goal won't be there anymore. And you'll just be happy with the process rather than the reward.
So here's what I think is really interesting, right? I think a lot of people overvalue that happiness, and that's why they get caught in this almost trap, right?
Right.
It's good to have a good value on happiness, because obviously you don't want to be depressed all the time or, like, angry and all those other bad emotions. But I think the reason this fulfillment and peace is not as sought after is because people don't realize that it's not going to be as exciting. It's not a good feeling emotion as happiness is, right? But the reason it's so important is because of how solid it is. It's always going to be there no matter what other emotion is, like, in play, because, like, you can even be at peace and happy, but you can also be at peace and angry, if that makes sense.
100%, yeah.
Like, there's that stable base, and it's such a more powerful plane to stand on than, like, what happiness is, right? Because, like, happiness isn't ever going to be solidified. And that's the thing. It's like, these aren't even technically the same things, but people don't understand how important it is to have that base in order to understand all these other emotions that come into play.
Right.
You know?
I think a good way to explain it, because this is kind of something that I thought was really interesting. The more I grow up and the more I see the way people interpret relationships, right? Because I think this is one of the biggest ones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people look for romantic relationships as the reason to be happy all the time, right? We've talked about it here on the podcast, how if you want to have a truly healthy relationship, you have to get rid of the idea that the relationship is what you need to be happy, right? You shouldn't need the relationship at all. You should be happy on your own, and that relationship only adds and builds upon that happiness, right? So here's my kind of my point. There's 2 stories I'm going to tell here. They'll go quick. Don't worry.
No, you're good.
But I think they're really important stories of 2 different kind of sides of the same idea of this, what I'm going to call the wrong way to do it. And it's not bad. It's completely normal to think in this way because most people in society do. But I think it is an unhealthy way if you're trying to actually build a healthy relationship with someone that is going to last long term. Okay? So to start off, I have a friend. She's a great friend. And she's in this relationship with someone that I'd say is a bit turbulent. Nick might know who I'm going to be talking about.
I think I do.
But I'm not going to say any names. I don't want to talk about it. She knows what's going on, and I really hope the best for her and the relationship. But in my opinion, it is extremely unhealthy the way things are working. And the more I talk to her about it, the more I realize something really cool about the way she thinks. Not cool, sorry. But like, to me, it's cool thinking like,
fascinating.
It's fascinating how this is how people's brains works, right? This is how people think about it. So when she's in this moment of like happiness, it seems like everything else becomes a distraction, right? The only thing she's focusing on is the happiness with this person that she's with. And when it's good, it's really happy, it's exciting. She isn't needing anyone else. She only needs him. Doesn't worry about anything else. It's just him, right? And then something goes wrong. Things aren't as good anymore. A fight breaks out, right? And then they both go into this unhappy spell. And now they're both mad at each other. There's confusion. There's disagreement. There's a lack of communication and trust. And it's just this unhealthy ball of like stress, right? And in my opinion, that's the way that unhealthy relationships really identify themselves. There's big peaks of happiness and then big spells of sadness as well, rather than just being kind of a stagnant line of stability, right? That's a healthy relationship. It's not always happy. Like sometimes it can, that stability brings the happiness, right? So then I was talking to her and I was like, so like, what's going on? Like, what can you think is like really making you unhappy, right? And so we broke it down as she's constantly looking for like that fulfillment and happiness with this guy, and this guy sometimes doesn't do things the way she wants it to be, right? And then what happens is she's like, well, he doesn't make me happy anymore. And I'm like, okay, think about this a little bit. You're relying on someone else to bring you all of the happiness, right? Do you think you'll ever truly be able to be happy that way?
Where's the red flag there?
If you're constantly relying on someone else.
Yep.
Because people's decisions aren't always going to align with your decisions. There's going to be times where they make decisions that rightfully so might be unhealthy or rude, but they made that decision and it's completely out of your control, right? But you let it completely train wreck your motivation, your happiness, your purpose. You let all of that get out of the way simply because they made a decision that you have no control over, right? And so my point to her was like, because she was talking about how like she didn't know what she wanted to do. I was like, cool, that's cool. Like, I don't know what you want to do with your relationship. That's on you. You can decide that. But the one advice I'd give is stop looking for happiness in other people. Because the first thing she said to me, and it was a joke, but I think there's some amount of realistic thought in this.
At some point it becomes real. Yeah.
She said like, she was like, well, who am I going to like make out with now? Like, who am I going to have that moment with now? And I was like, you don't need to make out with anyone. Like, you don't. Like, just don't, right? And that's my real response to that. It's like, if you need that to be happy.
It's almost like a validation type thing.
It's almost, like this thing where it's like, you need that validation, you need that happiness, right? But in my opinion, you're never going to feel happy because you're looking for someone else to fulfill that, right? You're relying on someone else to be that person to make you happy. And that is always going to be a negative.
Yep.
You will never be truly happy that way. So the first step I'd say is like the first thing, if you can take away something from this, is realize that happiness is a fleeting idea and that relying on other people to bring it will never make you happy. It will no matter how hard you try. You can rely on someone else for your whole life, but it's only going to be an unhealthy relationship. And in my opinion, the healthiest relationship, someone who can be married to someone for 40 years, they are not happy all the time.
Oh, 100%.
Those two don't make themselves happy all the time, right?
Yeah, they probably wanted to kill each other at one point.
Right. Like, there's times where there's disagreements, there's times where there's problems, but the thing that separates that relationship from an unhealthy one is that both of them are able to be stable and happy on their own. Mm-hmm. So it's this stable line in this relationship where, yes, sometimes within the relationship there might be a problem or an altercation, but both are healthy and stable individuals relying on themselves to be happy. So they can, think about what happened, come together, have a discussion, and then keep it at that stable line, right? And the other side of it was this other thought I had. And this is something I was talking about with my mom. This is the other story. And this is another thing that I see a lot of people do. I was talking about some experiences I've had with other people, with, dating and talking to other people. And I was very interested to see that there's some people who seem to be very concerned about kind of letting their guard down and giving someone their trust. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'll explain how I think this kind of connects in a second, right? It's this sense of they never truly want to go into that sense of like, I want a relationship for the fulfillment. I want that relationship for that connection. And they instead are just looking for fleeting levels of happiness. And as soon as that relationship doesn't just feel like bubbles and sunshine and rainbows, the honeymoon phasey kind of thing. They
go and dip.
They dip. They're out.
Yep.
Right? And it's normal. We're young, right? Mm-hmm. People are like that. People like to hook up. People like to not commit, whatever. That's normal, right? But in my opinion, there's something really interesting about the way your brain works if you think that way. And I think it comes from the sense of people who are looking for happiness, not fulfillment, mm-hmm. right? As soon as it becomes a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of work has to be put in, a little bit of effort has to be put in, it's too much, mm-hmm. right? But what people don't realize is those people, the ones who are constantly looking for happiness in others, are the most unhappy. Yeah. They're the most unhappy people I've ever met.
No, that is 100% true. There's, you can see, I guarantee some guy or girl who's like back-to-back relationships all the time, right? And they're the most unhappy person you've ever met. And like, yeah, maybe they've had some cool, interesting relationship moments, but they are constantly finding that joy in other people when they haven't taken a moment to look for like peace within themselves, right. And that is a huge, huge thing, especially like for our generation, I think.
100%.
Like, even ask yourself, like, as a viewer, like, am I actively pursuing fulfillment, Like, it's always normal in society to be like, I'm looking for peace, I'm looking for fulfillment, but I don't think people actually
genuinely
do that, right? Like, it's romanticized. The idea of it is 100%. Very romanticized. The actual hard, like, looking for peace and fulfillment is not easy, but that stability that comes from it, and that's the main point I want to drive here, is that stability that comes from it is far more valuable than just the peaks and valleys that come from happiness,
There is something that I kind of realized I talk to my mom a lot about relationship stuff, so it's kind of funny that I keep bringing her up. But shout out to my mom. She's a legend.
Shout out Mrs. Tornio.
She's a great mom. And I talk to her a lot about relationships, right? I talk to her a lot about things that are going on in my life. And kind of like one thing I noticed with a previous person that I was involved with was that it did feel like that sense of sometimes there was this big peak of happiness. Mm-hmm. It was so fun, so exciting. It felt like things were working. And it would last like 2 days, right? 2 days where it's like, oh my God, this is great. Like maybe this time it'll work. Oh my God, this is so exciting. And then same thing would happen where a big, drop off in attention or drop off in the happiness, right, happens. And then now I'm in the dumps again. And it was interesting how many people were like, bro, what do you do? Like, you're like all over the place. You know what I mean? Like there was those 2 months where it just felt like everyone could tell that I wasn't myself, right? And I kept telling myself, I was like, nah, it just means I have some work to do on myself. It just means as soon as I cut that person off, I was back. You know what I mean? It was like this again. It wasn't like this. It was like this, right? And this is where I was for a year and a half. So it felt really weird to start being like this all the time, mm-hmm. right? I wasn't eating as well. I wasn't focusing on myself as well. All of those things kind of went away because I was so distracted by an unfulfilling relationship, right? And it was an unfulfilling one. It might have brought happiness, so I was telling myself it was fulfilling, mm-hmm. but it was just bringing, short bits of happiness, not fulfillment, mm-hmm. right? Because it's kind of that thing where it's like, in a relationship, you want the fulfillment because the fulfillment will bring happiness. You don't want the happiness because the happiness goes like this, mm-hmm. right? If you have the fulfillment, then you're going to always see some amount of happiness within it, right? And now I'm into new things with, this new girl that I'm talking with, and it feels a lot more like this.
Yeah.
there hasn't been a moment where it starts feeling like this, because we're both equally in the same place mentally. We're both equally in the same place in terms of like working on ourselves and being okay with like allowing the other person to go do their thing. And it just feels fulfilling and happy all the time, rather than this, right? This big ups and downs, these troughs of happiness and unhappiness. So just one thing I can bring away. It's like, hey, look for fulfillment, not happiness, and you'll start to be a happier person.
I think another really important factor in this is that all that peace and fulfillment, you can find it, within yourself, but it's going to be so much easier when you have the correct people pushing you in that direction, right? I think something that's really important, I often will tell people, are your friends, do they just make you happy, right? Like, people will be like, well, my friends make me happy, or like this relationship makes me happy,
right?
Or like, I enjoy spending some time with them, but do they push you to be a better person?
Right.
That's something that I think is really crucial, is to have enough self-awareness to ask, like, hey, is this person actually like promoting growth in my life? Are they pushing me towards that fulfillment and that peace, or are they just giving me high valleys and low peaks? Because you just don't want that in your life.
Right.
So many people get caught up in the high valleys that they even ignore those. Like, they'll just be like, oh, well, the high valley was so good. Like, okay, that we go through bad times. Like, you shouldn't have to suffer through that kind of stuff, though.
No.
Like, it's not good mentally.
No.
So I think you need to practice some self-auditing. Ask yourself, like, oh, do I just enjoy hanging out with this person just because they make me feel happy? Or do they make me feel happy, but they also do push me towards the right direction?
Right.
Like important stuff like that.
Yeah. Do I feel fulfilled?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Do I feel fulfilled? Do I feel like I'm
achieving things?
I'm achieving
growing
things
as a person
and,
as well.
Yeah, and am I finding that stability within this person? That's really, really important, and especially will lead to a lot more maturity, is being able to identify that.
Exactly. I think the most healthy relationship is someone where it like feels like having that person in your life adds that stability. It's like a foundation of, like, they're building upon your foundation that you already have, right? You're not relying upon them, but it's just like they're adding to that foundation, right? Yeah. Kind of an important point that you made there that I thought was an interesting thing is people going, yeah, here's all these bad things, but like this happiness is really fun, right? It's kind of the same thing with dopamine levels and like what we were talking about before with social media, of this thing where a lot of the time people can feel kind of down in the dumps, upset about things when they're looking through social media. They feel like, oh, these people are better than me, blah, 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 blah. But then the dopamine triggers and those excitement that you get from being on social media takes away from that. And they're like, they distract themselves like, oh, but it's like fun. And here's all these fun things. And like, I, love social media. It's like so pretty and cool and fun. But then there's a lot of negatives to it as well, right? And it's kind of the same thing with the relationship. People ignore all of the bad and unhealthy things going on. And they say, whoa, like, look at how happy I was, right?
Yeah. You can't justify it like a peak with this sheer amount of like low valleys.
Right.
It's just totally unfair to yourself.
And it's like, I was kind of trying to explain that to my friend that I talked about in the first story, where she was like, yeah, like I know it's not good, but like I'm going to miss the fun moments. And I'm like, well, stop thinking about the fun moments. Those were moments in time where they were fun. Yes. But you were going to have plenty of those in the future. Right.
It's really interesting to add on to this. This is like slightly different, but I think it's a good way to explain how this is viewed, right? A lot of people on social media, like when you get a bunch of comments, you'll get a ton of like comments that are like supporting you and you feel so excited, but then you get one hate comment and you just view the whole thing as hate, right?
Yeah.
And that'll happen to a lot of people. It's like the inverse thing for your friendships. Like, say you feel all this joy, or you feel like one really great joy point, then you just ignore all this like void disgustingness that's at the bottom because you just felt good during that one like peak.
Exactly.
Like I said, that's like really selfish not selfish. This is like extremely bad for how treating yourself.
Yeah. You're treating yourself poorly.
Yeah, exactly.
Your
self-respect, lack of it.
You're lacking. You have lack of self-respect and lack of like self-worth. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
You don't deserve that. You deserve so much more than that. You deserve someone who's going to treat you well all the time, right? Of course, like we said, there's going to be times where things don't work out exactly how you hope them to. But for the most part, it should be happiness in terms of that person is fulfilling and they're a good, stable person in your life, right? Like, to me, I have I made a lot of friends this year, and I have those friends that I look out to. Shout out. I'm just going to say their name because they're like 3 of my best friends. 2 of them are going off to college. I already missed one of them. So shout out to Spencer, Delaney, and Justin. I made these friends this year, and these people are seriously some of the best people that I've ever met. And they are those people that I'm like, damn, they make me feel just like fulfilled. It's not like we're happy all the time. Like sometimes we'll just sit there. We won't even be talking. We'll just be sitting next to each other. And it's like this feeling of like, I can always go back to this person, trust this person, feel fulfilled with this person. they bring a level of stability and happiness to my life that I wouldn't have without, and I wouldn't want it any other way, right? It's that same thing. So like breaking it down more, I think let's kind of jump back to the main concept, which is that fulfillment concept of what does like fulfillment really mean. I think we got a little sidetracked talking a lot about the examples, but it's good. Those examples are going to help you kind of understand. I think hopefully you've gotten a better understanding if you're listening to this. But when I say fulfillment, it doesn't just mean in relationships. It's in the sense of like, okay, we're not looking for just happiness. We're not just looking for, things that make you feel that excited, happy feeling. We're talking about enjoying the journey, enjoying each and every point that you're spending, right? In the sense of like, if we want to have the relationship example, enjoying all the fun moments that you have, but also the times where you have to sit there and do things for them, sit there and spend time talking to them when they're sad. Those things should be just as fulfilling as the fun things, right? Because that's what a real relationship is. Being there for them 24/7, not just when you want to be or when it's fun or exciting, right? A great way to tell an unhealthy relationship is if it feels like you can't talk to them about things. When they're just like, whatever, like they seem like annoyed with you when you try to talk to them about things that make you upset. That's them saying, I'm not looking to be fulfillment in your life. I just look for the happiness. And other than that, then it's whatever, right? Same thing with when you're like kind of working on yourself, right? Working on something that you truly find, exciting and fun, like with Thinking Wealthy, right? I enjoy the journey. I'm not looking to be famous or rich or whatever. Like if none of this works at all, I will still be fulfilled and happy in the sense that I spent my time grinding, doing something that makes me happy, doing something that I think is going to add value to other people's lives. That's fulfillment, right? The sense of I don't care what I'm doing. I'm just doing it 100% of what I can to help other people and to do this thing that I dreamed of doing, right?
Yeah. For me, there's 2 points I want to bring up for what fulfillment is. First thing is that I think it's defined through how you choose to define it, right? Obviously, I think the general sense of fulfillment should be a sense of stability in each person, and you choose whatever that fulfillment is. So you can be fulfilled in, say you're a sports career and you're really good at soccer. It shouldn't be about just winning every single game. I think you have to learn to find that peace in like training hard every single day, getting the best at, kicking the soccer ball into the goal. I don't know. I'm not a soccer player, but you understand what I'm saying. Like each aspect of whatever you're pursuing, you should find a sort of an understanding of why you're doing it and that it doesn't deter you from the main goal, And so I think for me personally, how I see fulfillment, it's this sense of like unchanging, the stability that no matter what emotion, whatever path is like, not path, whatever emotion or obstacle is thrown into the path doesn't stop me from the main mission, And like that's where I find that peace, is that whatever's like in the way, whatever's trying to stop the progress isn't successful. And that's just because it's so stable and constantly moving forward, is that like nothing can stop the momentum and the peace that I've generated the past like 2 years on this journey,
Exactly. I think, really searching for that peace is an important point, right?
100%.
Finding that fulfillment and peace and just doing rather than like constantly trying to hit that dopamine high and that excitement 24/7. I think that's people's biggest problem, is they can't break it down and just be happy with the moment in the excitement of just doing, right? Just trying and doing and trying to be successful regardless of what actually, happens, right? It's just like, I'm doing this simply because it's fulfilling and I want to, right? So I feel like for the most part, we've kind of cracked down on the issue. Hopefully you kind of take some good points away from this and understand this important concept, because I think this is crucial.
Oh, 100%.
This is a crucial thing that you have to learn in life if you truly want to be successful. It's that you're not always going to be happy. There's not always you can never expect to always be happy, and if you're constantly searching for happiness, you will never be happy.
Yep.
The best way and the way to be happy for as most as you can in life, in my opinion, is by searching for that peace and that fulfillment, and that in turn will bring happiness because it's stable. Stability brings that happiness, right?
The man who enjoys the journey will go much farther than the man who enjoys the destination.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Boom. All right.
So I think that's a good closing thought.
I think so too. I think we wrapped this up well. Hope you guys all enjoyed this episode.
It's Monday. It's 6 a.m. You're out here grinding Pacific Standard Time. Go achieve some greatness this week,
Yes, sir.
Go make someone's life just a little bit better. And remember, if we helped you at all in any way, go tell people about the show. That's how we grow, If we did anything that helped you, help us out. That's what this is about,
Yes, sir.
So we appreciate you guys, especially if you've watched every episode now for 7 episodes?
26.
For 26 episodes, if you watch this every day or every single week for 26 weeks, you're incredible. So shout out you. You're top 1%.
Let's go. All right.
Go achieve some greatness. Peace out, you guys.